What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of At a Glance, a series in which I give you an appetizer sample or glimpse into a particular faction in 40k. And the goal behind it is to help you decide if you want to look further into the Force on your own, or maybe even start collecting that Force as well. So up on the chopping block this time, by viewer request, is going to be the Storm Wardens Space Marine chapter, a Loyalist Space Marine chapter. Now the Storm Wardens are kind of interesting because they are a Loyalist Space Marine chapter, but they're newer. They were created essentially what we know about them in color scheme and fluff and all that for the Death Watch tabletop RPG, and that's not that long ago when you think about it, especially in comparison to other Space Marine chapters out there. So they're a relatively new Space Marine chapter, but they have a decent amount, a good enough amount written for them to really give you a taste of what they're about and help you decide if you want to be them or not. Which makes sense because when you are a tabletop RPG, you are vying for attention. And in character creation for the Death Watch, you don't pick race, instead you pick chapters, kind of the same thing for them. And the Storm Wardens are vying for attention with Blood Angels, Dark Angels, Ultramarines, Black Templars, and so on. So they're going to have some interesting stuff written about them to kind of catch your attention and make you consider playing them over a chapter you might already know. So with that said, they are located in the Calixtic sector of space, because that's where the Death Watch RPG takes place. And they're supposed to be the resident Space Marine chapter. Their homeworld is called Sacris, or Sacris. So with that said, let's jump right into their color scheme. Their color scheme is simple yet effective. It mixes blue with having a silver or a light gray if you're not into metallics. I personally would go silver. It's a nice color matchup. Blue and silver always work well together on models. So the way they do it is kind of interesting. It's not wholly unique. I've seen this done in other chapters, but it's a nice refreshing take on applying these colors to a Space Marine power armor. So the silver is in the shoulder pad inset, the chest emblem, the hands, the knee pads, and the lower legs. Everything else is blue. Their helmet lenses are red typically, and their weapons typically are black. A simple but effective color scheme. It works very well, looks very crisp. Now, their squad markings can be done in blue or black. I've seen both, and both work just fine, whatever's easier for you. And you have their chapter symbol, which is a specific shield look. It looks like a specific style of shield with a lightning bolt on that can be silver or white, depending upon your preference. That can be difficult to freehand. I know I wouldn't be able to freehand it, but there's a way around that, which I'll go into a bit later on. So that's their look. A very effective look, very crisp. I like it. The color scheme in terms of blue with the silver always works out well. So from there, let's look into their fluff a bit. And I'm just going to focus on one incident, one of their fluff that really defines them as a chapter and defines their homeworld. And that's the Nemesis incident of the 36th Millennium. They have other stuff written in their fluff, other battles, and they go into more detail than I'm going to on the Nemesis incident, but this is an at a glance, so I'm just going to skip along the surface. Basically, they fought alongside an Inquisitor Lord of the Ordo Xenos against a race known as the Enslavers. These guys are very dangerous, but you only really hear of them in fluff blurbs in Imperial Armor books, maybe in a Codex fluff blurb, in novels, or in a tabletop RPG as the antagonist. Other than that, you don't really hear about them, but they are a very dangerous species. At the conclusion of the incident, the chapter discovered that their first company was psychically corrupted by the enslavers, and this usually results in termination of those corrupted. But instead, the chapter kind of reached a deal with the Inquisitor Lord, and instead of killing them off, they would put them into stasis, where they could do no harm because they're in stasis and nothing would happen because they're in stasis. So the entire first company and the chapter master as well was put into stasis. The idea being, once they find a way to combat this corruption and cure it, that they would be cured and released from stasis to rejoin with the chapter. This stasis vault contraption was sealed away in a hidden spot within their massive fortress monastery, as well as a section of the fortress monastery which is sealed up. So the only beings that know the location of the stasis vault are a select number of the chapter's dreadnoughts, who all took a vow of silence, which is a very interesting setup. So the idea is that they would, I guess, break their vow of silence once a cure was found. But it also sealed a bit of their, or a section of their fortress monastery, which had their records. So the chapter does not know what its founding is, or its parent chapter or primarch is, or anything like that, which is kind of an interesting dilemma and setup. On top of that, in rebuilding the chapter, those who joined the first company became known as the inheritors, because they inherited this rank from those who are in stasis, basically. So that's an interesting setup. With that said, this incident also affected their homeworld. What they did is they had a bunch of automated beacons put out into space, warning to stay away from this area of space and stay away from their planet. It was now declared a forbidden world in the Imperial records. Nothing is to go near it. Nothing is to even try to set foot upon it. It's falsely being claimed that it has a virulent plague on the planet's surface. This is all by design to keep it isolated, probably because of the psychically corrupted space marines in stasis. So, with that said, if you were to venture further into that space, go past the automated beacons essentially and not listen to them, there is no second warning. You just get shot out of the sky, basically. So that's kind of an interesting setup also. So you have a chapter that has this incident that helps define them as a chapter, as well as define their homeworld, set up as this isolated forbidden world that they are still a part of. So with that said, they participate in battles outside. They're not isolated and just stay within their homeworld's area. They do fight in other sectors of war, and they do send their numbers to Deathwatch when requested or when it's time to honor that oath. And whenever they do send one away for Deathwatch, what's interesting is it's like a chapter event. The chapter, as best it can, will mobilize to see that battle brother off, which is kind of a cool camaraderie thing. I kind of like that a lot about the Storm Wardens. So that's a little fluff blurb about them joining the Deathwatch and all that. Now, in terms of the chapter, they have a large number of tech marines, and it's thought that maybe they have a closer relationship than most chapters do with the Mechanicum, but it's never been confirmed. The chapter also has a big belief in single combat personal glory type stuff. This has led to many a reckless action by leadership within the chapter, as well as battle brothers, seeking personal glory, single combat, and then being overwhelmed and killed recklessly. It doesn't mean they lose battles left and right, but it does mean that their win came at the cost of more Space Marine lives than were necessary, if you will look at it critically. But it's an interesting little flavor of the chapter there. And amongst that flavor is their preferred way of doing war. For as much as they want single combat and personal glory, they are also masters of the armored assault, which involves heavy bombardment and then armored assault, which isn't very single combat styled either. So it's an interesting blend of when their boots are on the ground and they're in the enemy's face, they want single combat and glory that way, but they're also masters of just obliterating the enemy with a heavy armored assault, which kind of explains away the high number of tech marines. So a nice interesting blend. So that's the chapter in a very, very, very basic nutshell. A little bit of flavor there to help you decide if you wanted to look further or maybe even collect them. And if you were, this next part is going to be on some recommendations, some ideas in terms of collecting them as a force. And the first step is picking out the codex. Now, my personal recommendation is the regular Space Marine Codex. I don't think there's a reason to look elsewhere at all. So, the different chapter tactics can be applied depending upon how you want to represent the way the Storm Wardens fight. And they have librarians, and I bring that up because if you want to make use of librarians, you can. And while they have librarians, if you don't plan on using one in your army list, there's no reason why you couldn't make use of the Black Templar's chapter tactics, because you're just using the chapter tactics to represent their fighting style. So the negative of having no librarians in your force doesn't even really matter. that might be an option, or the Imperial Fists, or the Iron Hands, or the Ultramarines, or whomever you think really fits with that Armored Assault personal combat style you're going for and how you're going about it. Just go with whatever chapter tactic, you'll be just fine. In terms of supplemental books, they're out there. There's a variety of them. Some require a certain chapter's tactics, some don't. I'm not going to recommend any. You could easily use them if you want to, and you can just as easily not use them. It's not like if you don't use it, you're going to lose or you're not doing it right. It's all up to you whether or not you want to use them in the first place. So, with that said, that's the Codex. Really simple, easy to take care of. So is models, because they're Space Marines. Now, there's nothing specifically Storm Warden, but there's plenty of Space Marine bits and kits from GW and from Forge Ruled. All will work. If you have some cool looking Chaos Space Marine helmet or torso that doesn't have any Chaos symbols on it, it just looks mean and cool and you want to use it, that can also work. So there's plenty of bits for Space Marines that work well together. They all fit together very nicely. That can lead to a very unique looking force and really opens up what you can make use of. So you have plenty to choose from. No problems there. That's pretty straightforward. Now when it comes to representing their squad markings and their chapter symbol, the squad markings can be blue or black. Some decals have black and blue squad marking types on it already, depending upon from Forge World or not and what kits you bought from GW. If you really want blue squad markings, well, if they're sculpted details, just paint them blue. If they're not, you can use the white squad markings, put that decal down, seal it a little bit, and then carefully paint the blue over it, and you'll have your blue squad markings just fine. You can always make use of white squad markings on blue. So let's say you have a tank and you want to put a marking on the blue part of the tank. Just use a white marking, you'll be just fine. In terms of their symbol, real quick, you could freehand it. You could put a squad marking in either shoulder pad and then use a Terminator shield bit. Not the storm shield, but the little shield that goes on their shoulder pad in the Assault Terminator kit. You can take that and instead apply it to a power armor shoulder pad and paint the lightning bolt on it to represent the symbol of the chapter, and then have squad markings in either shoulder pad. That could work. And lastly, what I recommend is getting clear decal paper as opposed to white decal paper, and doing an internet search, because you'll find it, and downloading and printing off on that decal paper the Storm Warden's decal sheet that was made by fans. These things are free, and they really do serve and fill in a nice void where it's hard to make certain symbols by hand for a lot of people. Storm Wardens are no exception. So because it's a blue shield that can print fine on clear decal paper, the Thunderbolt's going to be clear. So when you put that shield symbol down onto the silver shoulder pad inset, you're going to get a silver lightning bolt, which works just fine. So you can do that, play around with it. All you need to do is get clear decal paper and gloss varnished spray to seal it, and you got yourself decals to do the chapter symbol. So that's really it for the Storm Wardens. A interesting chapter with a nice crisp color scheme that I think could appeal to a lot of players. It's unfortunate that it's only really known about in the Deathwatch RPG setting in terms of having the story available to you of them and whatnot, because I think this could appeal to a decent amount of players out there. And they probably know about it already. You probably follow Deathwatch RPG a little bit, even if you never played it. So, anyways, that's the Storm Warden. So thanks for sticking through. If you have any questions, comments, or requests, feel free to post them in the comments section. And until next time, take it easy.